I thought the security system was just a housewarming gift, a tangible way to bridge the distance between my old life and my father's new start. I wanted to prove I was finally the good daughter. Instead, I handed my stepmom the keys to my financial future. She did not just cross the line with my life savings, she carefully erased it, proving that sometimes the people you try hardest to please are the ones robbing you blind. The drive back to Briar Glen always felt like traveling backward in time, moving from the sharp, high-definition reality of my life in Port Crescent into the soft, blurred edges of my childhood. The highway stretched out for 3 hours, cutting through the dense, green heart of Oregon, where the fir trees grew so thick they seemed to swallow the light. I was 33 years old. I had a title that sounded important, a senior project manager at a logistics firm. I had a savings account that I had built brick by brick, dollar by dollar, sacrificing vacations and fancy dinners to ensure I would never be vulnerable. Yet, as I turned off the interstate and saw the familiar exit sign for Briar Glen, I felt exactly like the awkward, apologetic teenager I had been 15 years ago. My father, Rafael Flores, had moved again. This was the 3rd time in 10 years. Every time he and my stepmother, Marlene, decided they needed a fresh start. They sold whatever house they were in and bought something new, something that promised to fix whatever unseen cracks had formed in their happiness. This time, they had settled in a development called Juniper Ridge. The name sounded synthetic, like a candle scent. And as I pulled my car into the subdivision, the houses reflected that same manufactured perfection. They were all shades of beige and gray, with manicured lawns that looked like they had been vacuumed rather than mowed. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I was here to be a good daughter. That was the mantra I had repeated to myself for the last 100 miles. I was here to be present. I was here to bridge the gap that had widened over the last decade. A gap filled with missed calls and polite, surface-level text messages. When I pulled into the driveway of the slate-gray 2-story house, the front door opened before I could even turn off the engine. Marlene stood there, framed by the entryway, wearing a cream-colored cardigan that looked expensive and impossibly clean. She waved, a frantic, enthusiastic motion that did not quite match the stillness of her eyes. I stepped out of the car, the damp Oregon air sticking to my skin. "Piper!" Marlene called out, stepping onto the porch. "You made good time. We were worried about the traffic near the pass." I forced a smile, slinging my bag over my shoulder. The traffic was fine. "Marlene, just a little rain." Then my father appeared behind her. Seeing him always hit me with a dull physical ache. In my head, Rafael Flores was still the man who could lift a ladder with one hand and carry me on his shoulders. But the man standing in the doorway was smaller. His shoulders curved inward, as if gravity was pulling him down harder than it pulled the rest of us. His hair, once a thick, dark shock, was now thinning and entirely silver. He moved slower, shuffling slightly as he came out to meet me. "Hi, mija," he said, his voice warm but raspy. "Hi, Dad." I hugged him, smelling the familiar mix of Old Spice and sawdust, though I knew he had not done any carpentry in years. He felt fragile in my arms, his frame thinner than I remembered from Christmas. "You look good, Dad," I lied, pulling back to look at him. "I am fine," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "Just fine. The knees imply that it is going to rain harder later. But otherwise, I am a young man." Marlene laughed, a tinkling sound that felt rehearsed. "Oh, stop it, Rafe. You are only as old as you feel, and with this new house, we are both feeling 20 years younger. Come inside. Piper, you have to see what we have done with the place. It is our forever reset. Forever reset." That was Marlene's term. She used it every time they moved. It was her way of erasing history, of claiming that happiness was just a zip code change away. I followed them inside. The house smelled of lemon polish and new carpet. It was spotless, absolutely, terrifyingly spotless. There were no stacks of mail on the counter, no shoes kicked off by the door, no stray coats. It looked like a model home where no one actually lived. The walls were painted a pale, sterile gray, and the furniture was arranged with geometric precision. "Do you like it?" Marlene asked, watching my face closely. "We wanted something open, something that breathes. It is beautiful," I said. And I meant it. Mostly. It was a nice house. It just did not feel like a home. It is very spacious. "It is a clean slate," Marlene said, walking over to smooth a non-existent wrinkle on a throw pillow. "We left so much clutter behind at the old place. Mental clutter, too. We just wanted to focus on what matters." I looked at my father. He was standing by the kitchen island, looking a little lost in the vastness of the room. He smiled at me, a quick, almost apologetic expression. Before turning his attention to the coffee maker, "I will get the coffee going," he muttered. I brought my bag up to the guest room, which was decorated in the same neutral tones as the rest of the house. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. Taking a deep breath, I could feel the tension already, the familiar weight of performing happiness. Marlene wanted everything to be perfect. She wanted the forever reset to be real. And my role in this play was to be the successful, supportive stepdaughter who validated their choices. I went back downstairs to find them in the kitchen. Marlene had set out a spread of snacks that looked like a magazine photo. Grapes cut into small clusters, cheese sliced into perfect triangles, crackers fanned out in a circle. "So, tell us everything," Marlene said, gesturing for me to sit at the island. "Your dad says you got a promotion?" "That sounds intense." "It is good intense," I said, grabbing a cracker. "I am a senior project manager now. It means more oversight, bigger budgets, more headaches, mostly. But the pay bump is nice." Marlene's eyes sharpened. She nodded slowly, processing the information. "That is wonderful. Piper, really, a woman your age, standing on her own 2 feet. It is so rare these days to see someone so stable. And you are saving, right? You were always so good with your money, even when you were in college." I took a sip of the coffee my dad placed in front of me. "I try to be. I want to buy a place of my own eventually. Maybe in a year or 2. I have a healthy savings account set aside for a down payment." Marlene hummed, a sound of approval mixed with something else. "Calculation. That is smart," she said. "Very smart. You know, your father and I wish we had been as disciplined as you in our 30s. We are fine, of course. But this move? Well, the market is tricky. Interest rates are criminal right now." Dad looked down at his coffee cup. "We are doing okay. Marlene, let us not bore Piper with mortgage talk." "I am not boring her," Marlene said quickly, resting a hand on his forearm. Her nails were painted a soft pink, perfect and unchipped. "I am just saying I am proud of her. She does not have a husband to rely on, so she has to be twice as smart." "Right, Piper?" The comment landed with a soft thud. My lack of a spouse was one of Marlene's favorite topics. She never said it was a bad thing, exactly, but she always framed it as a deficit I had to compensate for. "I like being independent," I said, keeping my voice even. "I do not need anyone to take care of me." "Of course not," Marlene said, smiling. "That is what I mean. You are self-sufficient. It is a gift." Dinner was a production. Marlene had made a pot roast that was tender and flavorful. But the conversation felt like an interrogation disguised as catch-up. She asked about my rent in Port Crescent. She asked how much my car insurance was. She asked if I had a 401k and if I was maxing it out. It felt like she was building a file on me, noting every asset and liability on a mental scoreboard. Dad mostly ate in silence, nodding along, occasionally interjecting with a question about the weather or the traffic. He seemed diminished in her presence. Every time he started to tell a story about the neighbors or the new homeowners association, Marlene would gently cut him off or finish the sentence for him, correcting a detail here or there. "Oh, Rafe, it was not the treasurer who said that. It was the secretary," she would say, or, "No, honey, that was Tuesday, not Wednesday." It was polite. It was gentle, but it was relentless. It was a slow, steady erosion of his confidence. I watched him retreat further into himself, content to let her drive the conversation. After the plates were cleared, I decided it was time. I had been nervous about the gift, wondering if it was too much, or if it would be interpreted as me overstepping. But seeing my father so passive, seeing how fragile he looked, I wanted to do something tangible. I wanted to protect him. "I have something for you guys," I said, reaching for my bag, a housewarming gift. Marlene's eyebrows shot up. "Oh, Piper, you did not have to do that. Your visit is the gift." I pulled out the folder I had prepared. Inside were the brochures and the prepaid receipt for the installation. "I know how stressful moving is, and I know you guys are in a new neighborhood." I started. "I wanted you to feel safe. So, I paid for a full security package from Blue Fern Home Tech." I slid the folder across the island. Marlene opened it, her eyes scanning the documents. "It covers everything," I explained. "Smart locks on the front and back doors, so you do not have to fumble for keys. A video doorbell, sensors on the windows. It is all paid for, including the installation. They can come out on Monday to set it up." My father looked up, genuine gratitude washing over his face. "Mija, this is too much. These systems are expensive. I want you to have peace of mind." "Dad," I said, "you have moved around so much. I want this place to feel secure." Marlene was still reading the brochure. Her expression was hard to read. She looked at the receipt, then back at the list of features. "This is incredibly generous." "Piper," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "Really, Blue Fern is top of the line. I was just reading about them." She looked up at me, and for a second, I thought I saw a flash of disappointment. But then she smiled, and it was the widest smile I had seen all day. "Thank you," she said. "This is perfect, although—" She tapped a finger on the brochure. "What?" I asked. "Well, I see this package includes the standard window sensors," she said. "But the rep I spoke to when we were looking, just browsing, mentioned that for a house this size, glass break sensors are really better, and maybe a perimeter camera for the backyard, since we back up to the woods." I blinked. I had just spent $1,200 on the system. "Oh," I said, feeling a flush of embarrassment. "I got the gold package. I thought it covered the basics." It does, Marlene said quickly. "And it is wonderful. I am just thinking, if we are going to do it, we should do it all the way, right? For your father's safety, if you do not mind. Maybe we could ask them to upgrade those two things when they come." She looked at me with wide, expectant eyes. It was a masterclass in pressure. If I said no, I was cheaping out on my father's safety. If I said yes, I was spending money I had not planned to spend. "I guess we can look into it," I said, my voice sounding weak. "I can ask how much the difference is." "You are an angel," Marlene said, closing the folder and patting it with satisfaction. "A total angel, isn't she, Rafe?" "She is," my father said, looking at me with soft eyes. "Thank you, honey. You really did not have to. It is okay." "Dad," I said, "I want you to be safe." Later that evening, the house settled into a quiet that felt heavy. Marlene went to take a bath in the master suite, which she described as her sanctuary, leaving Dad and me alone in the living room. We watched a rerun of a sitcom, the laugh track filling the silence between us. "It is a nice house." "Dad," I said during a commercial break. He nodded, staring at the screen. "It is. Marlene loves it. She needed this. Piper, the last few years, they have been hard on her. She worries a lot. About money, about the future. This place makes her feel secure." I looked at him. He sounded like he was reciting a script she had written for him. "And what about you?" I asked. "Does it make you feel secure?" He looked at me, and for a second, the mask slipped. He looked exhausted. "I just want peace." "Piper," he said softly, "I just want everything to be calm. That is all I want." I reached out and squeezed his hand. His skin felt like dry paper. I stayed the weekend. It was an exercise in endurance. I slept in the guest room on a mattress that was too firm. listening to the silence of the suburbs. I tried to be helpful. I offered to help cook. But Marlene shooed me away. Saying she had a system, I offered to help unpack the last few boxes in the garage, but she said she needed to curate what they kept. So I sat. I read a book. I watched my father nap in his recliner. I felt like a ghost haunting the edges of their life. On Sunday morning, I woke up early. The sun was just starting to filter through the high-end blinds Marlene had installed. I went downstairs to get a glass of water, moving quietly across the plush carpet. As I neared the kitchen, I heard Marlene's voice. She was on the phone, her voice low but carrying in the acoustic perfection of the open floor plan. "No, I know," she was saying. "I know. But it is a start. She bought the security system, the whole thing, $1,200. Easy." I froze in the hallway. "I know." She continued. "It is about time. She has been hoarding that money for years while we struggled. She is finally investing in us. I think I can get her to cover the monthly fees. 2. She feels guilty. I can see it." My stomach dropped. It felt like I had swallowed a stone. Investing in us. She did not say, helping us. She did not say, giving us a gift. She said, investing. Like I was a venture capital firm and they were a failing startup. And the way she said I had been hoarding money, as if my savings, earned through 60-hour work weeks, belonged to the collective family pot. I backed away slowly, retreating up the stairs before she could catch me. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had always known Marlene was transactional. I knew she liked nice things, but hearing it laid out so plainly was jarring. She saw me as a resource. My presence here wasn't about family reconnection. It was a financial opportunity. I thought about leaving right then, just packing my bag and driving away. But then I thought about my dad. I thought about him sitting in that recliner, saying he just wanted peace. If I caused a scene, if I confronted her, he would be the one caught in the crossfire. He would be the one listening to her complain about my ungrateful attitude for the next 6 months. So I swallowed it. I took a shower, dressed, and went downstairs with a fake smile plastered on my face. "Good morning," Marlene chirped when I walked into the kitchen. She was chopping fruit, looking the picture of domestic bliss. "Sleep well?" "Fine, thanks," I said. I drank my coffee, feeling the bitterness on my tongue. I watched her move around the kitchen, and for the first time, I really looked at her. I saw the tightness around her mouth, the watchful way she tracked my movements. She wasn't just a fussy stepmother. She was a predator who had decided I was prey. When it was time to leave, the goodbye was prolonged and theatrical on Marlene's part. She hugged me twice. She made my dad stand next to the car for a photo. "We are so glad you came." "Piper," she said. "Really, it means the world to us." "It was good to see you guys," I said, lying through my teeth. As I opened the car door, Marlene put a hand on my arm. "Oh, one quick thing," she said, her voice dropping to that confidential whisper again. "About the security system." "Yeah?" I asked, bracing myself. "Since you set up the account with Bluefern, would you mind just keeping the monthly monitoring on your card? Just for now? It is only $40 a month. It is just with the move. And changing banks. It is a hassle to switch all the auto pays right this second. We can reimburse you. Of course, it is just easier with your credit standing. They process it faster." I looked at her. I knew, deep down, that I should say no. I should say, "Dad can write a check," I should say. "Transfer it to your account." But I looked at my father, who was standing by the garage, waving at a neighbor. He looked happy. He looked peaceful. And $40 was such a small amount. Was it worth a fight? Was it worth shattering the fragile truce we had just built? "Sure, Marlene," I said, feeling the word taste like ash. "Just keep it on my card for now. We can settle up later." She beamed. "You are the best. Safe travels." "Sweetie?" I got in the car and backed out of the driveway. I watched them in the rearview mirror, Marlene waving frantically, my dad raising one hand slowly. They stood in front of their perfect, slate-gray house, looking like a portrait of the American dream. The drive back to Port Crescent was silent. I did not turn on the radio. I just drove, watching the miles tick by, replaying the weekend in my head. She is finally investing in us. The phrase looped in my mind. I had tried to buy closeness. I had tried to use my money to bridge the emotional distance, thinking that if I solved a problem for them, they would see me, they would value me, and they did value me, just not in the way I wanted. I arrived at my apartment in Port Crescent just as the sun was setting. My place was small, a one-bedroom in an older building, but it was mine. I paid the mortgage, I picked the paint. It was quiet, and for the first time, the silence felt lonely rather than peaceful. I unpacked my bag, tossing my clothes into the hamper. I felt drained, a bone-deep exhaustion that had nothing to do with the drive. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I needed to check my work email, to prepare for the week ahead. I needed to get back to my reality, where I was a competent professional, not a resource to be mined. I scrolled through my inbox, spam, work update, newsletter, and then a notification from my credit monitoring service. Subject: New inquiry alert. I frowned. I hadn't applied for anything. I hadn't bought a car. I hadn't opened a new card. I clicked the email. A new inquiry has been detected on your credit file. Type: soft inquiry. Source: Canyon Vale, Mortgage Services. Date: October 14th. October 14th. That was yesterday. While I was at the house, I stared at the screen. A soft inquiry. That usually happened when a lender was pre-approving you, or when you were checking your own rate. Why would a mortgage company be looking at my file? I told myself it was noise. Identity monitoring services were always flagging things that turned out to be nothing. Marketing lists, background checks for insurance quotes. It was probably just a glitch, but my hand hovered over the mouse. She is finally investing in us. Marlene's voice echoed in my head. I saved the notification. I created a new folder on my desktop, named it Credit, and dragged the file into it. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was reading too much into a rude comment and a coincidental email. But as I closed my laptop and looked out the window at the city lights of Port Crescent, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind in Juniper Ridge, or worse, that I had brought something back with me, something invisible and dangerous that was already taking root. I went to bed, but I didn't sleep well. I dreamed of white carpets and invisible sensors, and the sound of a door locking from the outside. The drive to Juniper Ridge for the housewarming party felt different than the first trip. The first time, I had been fueled by a nervous, hopeful adrenaline. This time, 3 weeks later, the road felt longer, and the gray skies of Oregon seemed to press down on the roof of my car with a physical weight. I had convinced myself that my anxiety was just a hangover from the last visit, a lingering bad taste from Marlene's comment about investing in them. I told myself that families were messy, that stepmothers were complicated, and that I was an adult who could handle a few hours of social performance. When I arrived, the driveway was already full. Cars lined the street, sensible sedans and SUVs that spoke of the quiet, upper-middle-class stability Marlene desperately wanted to project. I parked 2 houses down and walked back, listening to the hum of conversation drifting from the open front door. Inside, the house had been transformed. The sterile, model home atmosphere had been warmed up with fresh flowers on every surface and the smell of baking brie and caramelized onions. Marlene was in the center of the living room, holding a glass of white wine, wearing a structured navy dress that made her look authoritative yet approachable. She was laughing, her head thrown back, surrounded by a circle of women who looked like they all shared the same hairstylist. "Piper!" Marlene cried out when she saw me. She broke the circle and came rushing over, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "You made it. Everyone, this is Raphael's daughter, Piper." She drove all the way from Port Crescent. A chorus of hellos and warm smiles greeted me. I felt like a prop being introduced on stage. "She is a senior project manager," Marlene added, beaming. "She is the one who keeps the trains running on time up north, and she got us that incredible security system I was telling you about. One of the women, a blonde with kind eyes and a heavy silver necklace, stepped forward. "It is so nice to meet you." "Piper," she said. "I am Cheryl. We live next door. Your stepmom has been telling us all about you. She is just so proud." I forced a smile. "That is nice to hear." Cheryl lowered her voice, leaning in slightly. "And honestly, it is so good to see her smiling like this. After everything she went through the last few years, well, it is just inspiring to see her start fresh. She is a brave woman." I froze. My smile became fixed, a plastic thing that hurt my cheeks. "Everything she went through?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Cheryl nodded sympathetically. "The losses, the instability. It takes a lot of strength to rebuild from zero like that. But look at this place. It is a triumph." She patted my arm and drifted back to the group. I stood there, clutching my purse, my mind racing. The losses? The instability? My father had held a steady job as a union electrician for 30 years before retiring. They had owned their previous home outright. They had pensions. They had never been destitute. Marlene was painting a picture of a tragic past, a phoenix rising from the ashes narrative that I did not recognize. It made me wonder what role my father played in this story. Was he the savior? Or was he the dead weight she had dragged across the finish line? I found my father on the back patio, manning the grill. He looked happier than he had 3 weeks ago, holding a pair of tongs like a scepter. "Hey, Dad," I said, stepping out into the cool air. "Piper," he grinned. "Look at these burgers. Wagyu beef," Marlene insisted. "They look great," I said. He looked at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Marlene says you have been busy at work." "Yeah, it is the busy season," I said. "Dad, how are you really? How is the house?" "It is good." "Mija," he said, flipping a burger. "It is expensive to heat, I will tell you that. But Marlene is happy. The neighbors are nice. It is a good community." He seemed content, wrapped in the simple pleasure of grilling meat for guests. I decided not to ask him about Cheryl's comments. I did not want to ruin his mood. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, Marlene's dramatic storytelling was harmless, a way to make herself feel special. Nothing more. Later. As the party was winding down and guests were collecting their coats, Marlene pulled me aside. "Piper, do you have a second?" she asked. "Just a quick thing while your dad says goodbye to the Johnsons." She led me into the small room off the kitchen that they called the home office. It was barely furnished. Just a desk and a chair, with a stack of unopened boxes in the corner. Marlene closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a long sigh. "What a day," she said. "But a good day. It was a nice party." "Marlene," I said. She walked over to the desk and picked up a manila folder. She tapped it against her palm, looking at me with a mixture of hesitation and hope. "Listen, I hate to ask you this, because I know you work all day," she began, "but your dad gets so overwhelmed with the paperwork for the house, the mortgage documents, the insurance, the endless forms. He just shuts down. And honestly, I am not much better. Numbers make my eyes cross." She held the folder out to me. "I was hoping you could just take a look at these. It is just some information on refinancing. I know we just bought, but the broker said something about a rapid adjustment option that could lower the payment if rates drop next quarter. You are so good at money. Could you just tell us if it makes sense?" I looked at the folder. Refinancing 3 weeks after closing? That sounded predatory or desperate. "Marlene," I said, not taking the folder, "you just closed on this loan. You usually have to wait at least 6 months to refinance, and the closing costs would eat up any savings." She waved her hand dismissively. "See? That is exactly what I mean. You know these things. We do not. I just want someone with a brain to look at it so we do not get taken advantage of." I sighed. "I can look at the brochure, Marlene, but I am not a financial advisor." She smiled, pushing the folder into my hands. "I know. But you are family. That is better. Oh, and one more thing." She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "I am trying to get us on a budget. A strict one. I downloaded that app you use, what is it called? Budget tracker? Yeah, I said. It is a good app. Right, she said. I set up an account. But I'm having trouble with the categories. The interface is so confusing. I was wondering, could you maybe log in on my phone with your account? Just for a second? So I can see how you set up your categories? Then I can just copy them to mine. It would save me hours of guessing. The request was delivered so casually, like asking to borrow a cup of sugar, but every alarm bell in my head started ringing. My budgeting app was linked to everything: my checking account, my savings, my credit cards, my investment portfolio. It was a live feed of my entire financial life. I took a half step back. I cannot do that. Marlene, I said. Her smile faltered. Why not? It is just to look at the categories. You can log right back out. Because it links to my bank accounts, I said, keeping my voice steady. It has all my personal data. I can't log in on another device. It is a security risk. Marlene let out a short, sharp laugh. A security risk? Piper, I am your stepmother. I am not a hacker in a basement. I just want to see how you organize your grocery budget. I can send you a screenshot, I offered, or I can build you a spreadsheet template in Excel and email it to you. I can set up all the formulas so you just have to punch in the numbers. She stared at me for a long moment. The warmth drained out of her face, replaced by a cold, flat look I had seen only a few times before. She looked at the phone in her hand, then back at me. A spreadsheet, she said, her voice flat. That sounds like a lot of work for you. It is easy. I lied. I do it all the time at work. I will send it to you tomorrow. She slipped her phone back into her pocket. Fine, if that is what you are comfortable with. I just thought, since we are family, we could be transparent, but a spreadsheet is fine. She turned and walked out of the office without waiting for me. I stood there holding the folder of refinance brochures, feeling like I had just narrowly avoided stepping into a trap. I drove back to Port Crescent that night feeling drained. I threw the refinance brochures on my passenger seat. I had glanced at them. They were junk mail. Generic solicitations from a lender called Canyon Vale Mortgage, the kind of thing most people threw in the recycling bin without opening. The fact that Marlene treated them like serious financial documents was worrying. Was she really that clueless? Or was she just looking for an entry point, a way to entangle me in their financial administration? 2 days later, I was sitting at my desk at work, staring at a Gantt chart for a shipping logistics project. When my cell phone buzzed, it was a number I did not recognize. This is Piper, I answered. Hello, Ms. Flores. This is Kevin from Bluefern Home Tech. I am calling to confirm the changes to your service plan. I frowned, leaning back in my chair. Changes? I did not request any changes. There was a pause on the line. The sound of typing. Oh, the agent said. Well, I see here that your account was upgraded to the Platinum Protection tier this morning. That includes the 24-hour perimeter monitoring, the cloud storage for video history, and the concierge dispatch service. The new monthly rate is $89.99. $90? My heart kicked against my ribs. The basic plan I had agreed to cover was $40. No, I said firmly. I did not authorize that. I want it changed back immediately. I understand. Ms. Flores, the notes here say the upgrade was authorized by the account holder at the residence. A Mrs. Marlene Flores? I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose. Of course. She is not the account holder. I said, I am the one paying the bill. She does not have the authority to change the plan. The agent sounded apologetic. I apologize, ma'am. Usually, we allow anyone with the verbal password to make changes to the service level. Mrs. Flores provided the password. The verbal password was my father's birthday, a date Marlene obviously knew. Downgrade it, Kevin, I said. Put it back to the basic plan. And put a note on the account. No changes unless they speak to me directly. I want a PIN code on the account that only I know. I set up the PIN, a random string of numbers I had never used before, and hung up. I was shaking. It wasn't the $50. It was the audacity. I called Marlene immediately. She answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "Marlene," I said, skipping the pleasantries. "Why did you upgrade the security plan?" There was a silence on the other end. Then, a light, airy laugh. "Oh, is that what happened?" "I was trying to look at the camera feed on the app this morning. I wanted to see if the mailman had come, and this window popped up asking if I wanted enhanced view. I must have clicked the wrong thing. These apps are so sensitive. Piper, one tap and suddenly you are signed up for everything." It wasn't a pop-up. "Marlene," I said, "you spoke to a representative. You gave them the verbal password." The silence this time was heavier. It lasted 5 seconds. "Well," she said, her voice dropping the confused act and shifting into a lower, darker register. "I thought you wanted your dad protected." I gripped my phone tighter. "He is protected. The basic plan protects him. The platinum plan has fire dispatch." "Piper," she said, "your father is getting older. If he leaves the stove on, do you want that on your conscience? Over $50? This was her move. Pivot to guilt. Weaponize my father's mortality. "It is not about the money, Marlene. It is about you changing a contract that is in my name without asking me. I have changed it back. Do not do it again." I hung up before she could respond. I felt sick. I stared at my computer screen, the rows of data blurring together. I felt like I was in a tug-of-war with someone who had greased the rope. I changed the password for the Blue Fern online portal. I set up 2-factor authentication to go to my phone. I told myself I had secured the perimeter. I was wrong. 4 days later, I was in a meeting with the VP of Operations when my phone lit up with an email notification. Subject: "Thank you for your upgrade." I froze. I covertly slid the phone into my lap and opened the email. "Dear Piper, thank you for choosing the Platinum Protection tier. Your service has been updated effective immediately." I excused myself from the meeting, my face burning. I walked out into the hallway and called Blue Fern. "I just received an email about an upgrade," I said, my voice tight. "I told you guys, no changes without the PIN. I am looking at the record." "Ma'am," the agent said, "the caller verified the PIN." I stopped walking. I stood in the middle of the hallway. People brushing past me. "That is impossible." I said, "I am the only person who knows the PIN." The caller identified herself as Piper Flores. The agent said, "She verified the last 4 digits of the Social Security number on file, the billing address, and the 4-digit PIN. We have the recording if you need to dispute it, but as far as our system is concerned, you made the call." The hallway seemed to tilt. The caller identified herself as Piper Flores. Marlene hadn't just used the password this time. She had become me. She had called, used my name, used my information, and overridden my direct instructions. "Cancel the account," I whispered. "I beg your pardon?" "Cancel it. Cut the service. Turn it off. Today, I cannot leave the home unprotected." "Ma'am," the agent said, "there is a cancellation fee of $200 for early termination." "Charge it." I snapped. "Just cut the line." I hung up. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a clumsy old lady clicking the wrong button. This was identity theft. I left work early. I could not focus. I drove home, my mind racing through the implications. If she had my Social Security number, which she probably did, from old tax forms in my dad's files, and if she was willing to impersonate me, what else could she do? I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I logged into my main bank account. I scanned the recent transactions, grocery store, gas station, electric bill, and then I saw it. 2 days ago, incoming transfer, $0.12, pending transaction, escrow, hold, Juniper Ridge, and right below it, incoming transfer, $0.85, pending transaction, escrow, hold, Juniper Ridge. I stared at the screen. I knew what these were. These were micro deposits, the kind banks use to verify an external account linkage. When you want to link account A to account B, the bank sends 2 tiny amounts to prove you have access. You verify the amounts, and the link is established. Someone was trying to link my checking account to an external account labeled Juniper Ridge, and they had almost succeeded. The deposits were there. All Marlene needed to do was log into whatever account she controlled and type in 0.12 and 0.85, and the pipe would be open. She could pull money out of my account as easily as she pulled it out of her own. I grabbed my phone and dialed my father. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to know if he was a part of this. Hello? He answered on the fourth ring. He sounded out of breath. Dad? It is Piper. Oh, hi, Mija. Is everything okay? You are calling in the middle of the day. Dad, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. Did you or Marlene try to link my bank account to something? I see some weird activity. There was a pause, a long, staticky pause. Link? He said vaguely. I do not know about links. Marlene handles the computer. Dad, someone is impersonating me. Someone called the security company pretending to be me. And now someone is trying to access my bank account. I heard a muffled sound in the background, like a hand being placed over the receiver. Then, voices, indistinct murmuring. My father came back on the line. His voice was different now. Stiffer. Piper, he said. Marlene said you two worked it out. She said there was a confusion with the bill paying, and she was just trying to streamline it so you would not have to worry about the checks. Streamline it? I asked, my voice rising. Dad, she pretended to be me. That is illegal. Lower your voice. Piper, he said. And I heard a flash of the stern father from my childhood. You are blowing this out of proportion. Marlene is just trying to manage the household. She said you offered to help with the budget. Families help each other. Families do not keep score. The phrase hit me like a slap. Families do not keep score. It was a Marlene phrase. I had heard her use it a dozen times to justify buying things they could not afford. And now, coming out of my father's mouth, it sounded like a command to surrender. Dad, I said, my voice trembling. This is not keeping score. This is my life savings. We will pay you back. Piper, he snapped. God, you act like we are thieves. It is just a cash flow timing thing with the new house. Why do you have to be so difficult? You have always been the difficult one. The line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, the silence ringing in my ears. You have always been the difficult one. He hadn't said that. Not really. That was Marlene speaking through him. She had successfully rewritten the narrative. I was the stingy, paranoid daughter. She was the beleaguered, resourceful wife trying to keep the ship afloat. I put the phone down. I did not cry. The hurt was there, deep and sharp, but it was quickly being covered by a cold, hard layer of self-preservation. I could not call Marlene. I could not call my dad. I was alone in this. I opened a new tab on my browser. I went to the 3 major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I initiated a credit freeze on all of them. I created pins that were random strings of 20 characters. I wrote them down on a piece of paper and locked it in my fireproof box. Then I called my bank. I need to report unauthorized access attempts. I told the fraud department, I want to close my checking account and open a new one with a new number. And I want to block any transfers from an entity called Juniper Ridge. It took 3 hours. I had to change my direct deposit. I had to update my bill pays. By the time I was done, my head was throbbing. But I wasn't done. I searched for consumer protection attorneys in Port Crescent. I found a name, Dana Holloway. Her website said she specialized in financial fraud and elder exploitation. I called her office. I need an appointment. I told the receptionist, as soon as possible. I got in 2 days later. Dana Holloway's office was in a brick building downtown, smelling of old paper and coffee. Dana was a woman in her 50s with sharp glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she took off her glasses and cleaned them with a microfiber cloth. This pattern, she said, her voice crisp and professional, the soft inquiry, the small request for help, the security system upgrade, the micro deposits. We call this access escalation. Access escalation? I asked. It is a testing phase, she explained. The perpetrator pushes a boundary to see if it holds. When you pushed back on the security system but agreed to pay the $40, you signaled that you were watching, but you were also willing to pay to keep the peace. So she pushed harder. The micro deposits are the final test. If you hadn't caught those, she would have drained your account within 48 hours. I felt a chill run down my spine. But why? I asked. They just bought a house. They have money. Do they? Dana asked. Or do they have a mortgage they cannot afford and a lifestyle they cannot sustain? People who commit this kind of friendly fraud. And that is what this is. Piper. Friendly fraud. Usually do it because they are desperate. They view family members not as people, but as liquidity. She leaned forward. The worst part is that it is almost always done by someone close. Someone who knows your mother's maiden name. Someone who knows where you went to high school. Someone who knows you will hesitate to call the police because you do not want to arrest your father's wife. I looked at my hands. She was right. I hadn't called the police. I had called the bank. I had called a lawyer. But I hadn't called the police. What do I do? I asked. Dana put her glasses back on. First, you document everything, every email, every call log. Second, you do not confront her again without evidence. If she knows you are building a case, she will destroy the paper trail. And third, she looked me dead in the eye. You need to accept that your father is likely compromised. He may not be a co-conspirator, but he is a tool. She is using his voice to keep you in line. You cannot trust anything he says to you right now. I nodded slowly. The truth of it settled over me like a heavy blanket. My father wasn't my protector anymore. He was the lock Marlene was using to pick my pocket. I walked out of Dana's office into the gray drizzle of the Port Crescent afternoon. I pulled my coat tighter around myself. I had come to Oregon to reconnect with my family. Instead, I was preparing for a war, and the battlefield was going to be the dining room table where I had just eaten a burger and pretended to be happy. The silence in my apartment felt different now. It was no longer the quiet of solitude. It was the hush of a crime scene. I spent my evenings sifting through digital debris, looking for fingerprints. Dana Holloway had told me to document everything, so I was combing through every login, every notification, every digital footprint I had left in the last month. It was in the trash folder of my email account that I found the smoking gun. I almost missed it. It was a draft, auto-saved by the server but never sent. The subject line was blank. The timestamp was 11:42 p.m. on the Saturday I had stayed at Juniper Ridge for the housewarming. I clicked it open. It was a form from my life insurance provider, a change of beneficiary request. The fields were partially filled out. Primary beneficiary, Rafael Flores. Relationship, father allocation, 100%. Contingent beneficiary, Marlene Flores. Relationship, stepmother, allocation, 100%. My breath hitched. I had never opened this form. I had never even logged into my insurance portal that weekend. But I had left my laptop open on the desk in the guest room while I showered. Marlene must have slipped in, opened a browser window, and started the process. She hadn't finished it. Maybe she heard the water stop running. Maybe she got spooked. But the intent was clear. She wasn't just after my checking account. She was positioning herself to inherit my entire estate if something happened to me. I sat back, feeling a cold sweat prickle my skin. This was not just greed. This was predation. She was methodically erasing my autonomy, replacing my decisions with her own, and she was doing it under the roof of my father's house. I needed to see them. I needed to see the physical reality of what I was fighting. The emails and the bank alerts were abstract, ghostly. I needed to look Marlene in the eye. I drove to Juniper Ridge on a Tuesday morning. I called in sick to work, blaming a migraine. I didn't call ahead. I wanted the element of surprise. I wanted to see the house without the stage lighting turned on. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different in the weekday light. The neighborhood was silent, empty of the weekend bustle. The slate gray siding looked dull, almost oppressive. I rang the doorbell. It took a long time for anyone to answer. Finally, the door swung open. Marlene stood there, She wasn't wearing her usual crisp, put-together outfit. She was in a velour tracksuit, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired. Her eyes widened when she saw me, but she recovered instantly, smoothing her expression into a mask of pleasant surprise. "Piper!" she exclaimed, though her voice lacked its usual lilt. "What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" "I was in the area for a client meeting." I lied smoothly. "I thought I would stop by and say hello. See how Dad is doing." She hesitated for a fraction of a second, blocking the doorway with her body. Then she stepped aside. "Of course. Come in. He is just in the back. Reading." "The house is a mess. You will have to forgive me." The house was not a mess. It was pristine, just as it always was. But the air inside felt stale, like the windows had not been opened in days. I walked into the kitchen. My father was sitting at the breakfast nook, a newspaper spread out in front of him. He looked up, his face breaking into a genuine smile. "Mija, what a surprise." "Hi, Dad." I went over and hugged him. He felt thinner than he had just a few weeks ago. His cardigan felt loose on his shoulders. Marlene bustled into the kitchen behind me. "I will put the kettle on," she said, her voice bright and loud. "Chamomile? Or maybe Earl Grey?" "Earl Grey is fine," I said. She moved around the kitchen with a frantic energy, opening and closing cupboards, filling the kettle. It was a performance of busyness, designed to keep me from asking questions. I leaned against the counter, watching her. My eyes scanned the room, the immaculate granite countertops, the bowl of fake fruit, the stack of mail sitting by the coffee maker. My gaze snagged on a white envelope near the bottom of the stack. It was a standard business envelope, the kind with a cellophane window. I recognized the logo in the corner immediately. It was my bank, but the address in the window wasn't my apartment in Port Crescent. It was 1402 Juniper Ridge Lane. My heart started to pound. I took a step closer, pretending to look for a teaspoon. "Is that my mail?" I asked, keeping my voice light. Marlene froze. The kettle in her hand clattered onto the stove burner. "What?" she asked, turning around too quickly. I reached out and pulled the envelope from the stack. "This is from my bank," I said, holding it up. "But it is addressed to this house. I never changed my address." Marlene's face went through a rapid series of contortions. Surprise, panic, then that smooth, practiced calm. "Oh, that?" she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Yes, Raphael and I were talking about it. We thought it would be safer." "Safer?" I repeated. "Well, you know how your apartment complex is," she said, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "The mailboxes are right out on the street. Anyone could break into them. We thought it would be better to have all the important documents consolidated here, at the family home, where it is secure." I stared at her. My apartment building had a locked mailroom with security cameras. It was infinitely more secure than a roadside mailbox in a subdivision. "You changed my mailing address without telling me?" I asked, my voice hardening. "Marlene, that is illegal. You cannot divert someone's mail." She let out a short, nervous laugh. "Illegal? Piper, do not be dramatic. We are family. We are just trying to help you stay organized. Your dad worries. You know, he thinks your living situation is temporary, unstable." She glanced at my father. He was watching us, looking confused and anxious. "Dad?" I said, turning to him. "Did you ask her to change my address?" He looked at Marlene, then at me. He licked his lips nervously. "We just want you to be safe. Piper," he said, "the mail. Papers get lost. Marlene said it is better to have everything in one place. For the files. For the files." He was repeating her words again. I looked back at Marlene. Her eyes were hard, daring me to push it. She was betting on my desire to protect my father. She was betting that I wouldn't scream at a confused old man in his own kitchen. I slipped the envelope into my purse. "I will handle my own mail." "Marlene," I said, "change it back. Today. I will. I will," she said, turning back to the stove. "Honestly. Piper, no good deed goes unpunished with you." She poured the tea, the ceramic clinking loudly against the mugs. Let us go sit in the living room, she said, steering us away from the kitchen and, I noticed, away from the hallway that led to the home office. It is more comfortable. We sat. We drank tea. We talked about the weather. It was surreal. I was sitting across from a woman who was actively stealing my identity, and we were discussing the forecast for rain. I needed to get my father alone. Dad, I said after 20 minutes, can you show me the backyard? You said you were thinking about planting some hydrangeas. I want to see where… Marlene started to stand up. Oh, I will come too. I have some ideas for… No, Marlene, I said, cutting her off. You stay and finish your tea. I just want a quick minute with Dad. She hesitated, half risen from her chair. The tension in the room spiked. She looked at me, and for the first time, the mask dropped completely. Her eyes were cold, calculating, assessing the threat level. Fine, she said, sinking back down. Don't be too long. The wind is chilly. I led my father out the sliding glass door onto the patio. The air was crisp, smelling of damp earth and pine needles. We walked to the edge of the lawn, near the fence line, out of earshot of the house. Dad, I said, turning to him, I need you to be honest with me. He looked down at his shoes. Piper, please, do not start a fight. Marlene is trying her best. I am not fighting. Dad, but I need to know. Did you sign anything for me? Anything at all? He shifted his weight. He looked at the fence, at the trees, anywhere but at me. She brings me papers. He said quietly, my hands, Piper, they shake. You know that. It is hard for me to hold a pen sometimes. So she signs for you? I asked gently. Sometimes, he admitted. Or she guides my hand. It is just forms. Insurance, taxes, the house things. There is so much paperwork with the new house. I cannot keep track of it all. Did you sign anything that had my name on it? I asked. A gift letter? A loan application? He frowned, trying to remember. There was a letter, he said slowly, about a gift. Marlene said it was for the taxes. She said you were helping us with the down payment, and we needed to document it so the IRS would not be angry. My stomach dropped. Dad, I never gave you money for a down payment. He looked up at me, confusion clouding his eyes. But Marlene said you did. She said you transferred it from your savings. She said you wanted to help us get the house. She said you were finally stepping up. I felt a wave of nausea. She had lied to him. She had told him I was financing the house, and then she had forged the documents to make it look true to the bank. She had used his trust in me and his trust in her to weave a web of fraud that trapped us both. Dad, I said, grabbing his arm, I did not give you that money. If there is a letter saying I did, it is a lie. He pulled his arm away, looking frightened. Do not say that. Piper, do not call her a liar. She loves us. She takes care of everything. If she fixed the papers, she did it for us. Why are you trying to ruin it? I looked at him. He was terrified. He wasn't defending her because he believed her. He was defending her because he couldn't survive without her. He was afraid that if he pulled the thread, his whole world would unravel. I realized then that this wasn't violence. It wasn't physical abuse. It was a quiet, suffocating manipulation. She had made herself indispensable, and now she was using that leverage to consume everything around her. I let out a breath. Okay, Dad, I lied. Okay, I just wanted to understand. Let us go back inside. I left 20 minutes later. I could not stay in that house a second longer. I felt like the walls were closing in. As soon as I was in my car, I called Dana Holloway. I need to see you. I said, I found mail. And my dad admitted he signed a gift letter. Come in, Dana said. I drove straight to her office. I laid the envelope on her desk. It is worse than we thought. I said, she diverted my mail to hide the paper trail. And she told my father I gave them money for the down payment. She had him sign a gift letter. Dana picked up the envelope, examining it. A gift letter, she murmured. That is significant. If she submitted a gift letter to a lender claiming you provided funds, and you did not, that is mortgage fraud, federal mortgage fraud. She looked at me. We need to pull the property records. Piper, we need to see exactly what was submitted to get that loan. Can we do that? I asked. Public records will show the mortgage amount and the lender. Dana said, but to get the loan file, we would need a subpoena. However, she turned to her computer. I can access a database that tracks deed filings. Let us see who the lender is. She typed for a moment. Her face remained impassive, illuminated by the blue light of the screen. Here it is, she said. The deed was recorded 2 months ago. Lender is Canyon Vale Mortgage. Loan amount is $450,000. She clicked another tab. And here's the interesting part. The down payment was $100,000. That is a 20% down payment. Very responsible, very clean. Where did they get $100,000? I asked. They sold their old house. But they still had a mortgage on it. They shouldn't have netted that much. Dana turned the screen toward me. It does not say where the cash came from on the deed, but if your father mentioned a gift letter... She paused, tapping her pen on the desk. Piper, if she forged a gift letter from you, she would have had to show proof of funds. She would have had to show a bank statement from the donor, you, showing that you had the money to give. I froze. Proof of funds? She would need a copy of your bank statement, Dana said. Did you ever give her one? No. I said, never. Then she forged that too. Dana said grimly, or she accessed your online banking and printed one out. I thought about the sinking categories request. I thought about the security system upgrade. I thought about the micro deposits. She's been trying to get into my accounts for weeks. I said, but the house closed 2 months ago. How did she get a statement back then? I dug through my memory. 2 months ago, I had visited them at the old house. I had brought my laptop to do some work. I had left it on the kitchen table while we went out to dinner. She accessed it then. I whispered. She must have logged in, downloaded a statement, and maybe used a PDF editor to change the dates or the amounts if she needed to. Dana nodded. It is possible, and if she did that, she used your identity to secure a $500,000 asset. I felt sick. The housewarming gift, the security system. It wasn't just a grift for free monitoring. It was a test. She was testing how closely I watched my accounts. She was testing how easily she could impersonate me. She was testing the perimeter before she made her next move. And the next move was terrifying, because if she had already used me to buy the house, what happened when she couldn't make the payments? They come after you, Dana said, answering my unspoken question. If she defaulted, and the lender investigated, they would see your name on the gift letter. They might not come after you for the mortgage payments, but if they found out the gift letter was fraudulent, you could be implicated in the fraud scheme. She has tied you to the crime. I stood up and paced the small office. My hands were shaking. So what do? I asked. Do I call the police now? Dana hesitated. If you call the police now, you are accusing your father's wife of federal crimes. They will arrest her. Your father will be dragged into it. He signed the letter too, remember? He might be considered an accomplice. I stopped pacing. My father, an accomplice. She has trapped me. I said, if I expose her, I destroy him. That is exactly why she did it this way, Dana said. It is mutual destruction. She knows you will not blow up your father's life. I sank back into the chair. So I let her get away with it? No, Dana said sharply. You protect yourself. You lock down everything. You get an affidavit notarized stating you never provided a gift letter. You keep it in a safe place. You do not file it yet, but you have it ready, and you monitor that mortgage. If she misses a payment, you need to know, and, she added, her voice softening, you need to realize that the woman you met today, the one in the tracksuit who tried to divert your mail, is dangerous. She is not just a greedy stepmom. She is a financial predator. She is cornered, and she is using your father as a human shield. I left Dana's office with a plan. But no peace. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope over a pit of vipers. When I got back to my apartment, I logged into the Blue Fern portal. I checked the user list. There it was. A second authorized user. Name, Piper Flores. Email, Piper. Flores, 1. Gmail.com. My email was piper.flores@gmail.com. She had added a one. It was so simple. So stupid. And yet it had worked. I deleted the user. I changed the password again. I changed the PIN. Then I sat in the dark, staring at the screen. I thought about the housewarming gift. I thought about how I had wanted to give them safety. I had wanted to give them a fortress. Instead, I had helped her build a prison, and she had locked my father inside, with her holding the only key. I realized then that this wasn't going to end with a polite conversation. It wasn't going to end with a spreadsheet. It was going to end with one of us destroyed, and Marlene had a head start, but she had made one mistake. She thought I was just the difficult one. She thought I was just a checkbook with a pulse. She didn't know that I was my father's daughter, the daughter of the man who used to be strong, before she broke him down. And I had enough of his old strength left in me to burn the whole thing down if I had to. I picked up my phone and called the post office. "This is Piper Flores." I said, "I need to report a fraudulent change of address." It was a small move, a petty move, maybe, but it was the first shot in a war I was finally ready to fight. I decided to stop being the victim and start being the hunter. For weeks, I had been reacting to Marlene's moves, the security upgrade, the credit check, the diverted mail, trying to patch the holes in my perimeter as she punched them. But defense does not win wars, and it certainly does not expose a liar. I needed proof, not just of her access, but of her intent. I needed to catch her hand in the jar while she was still reaching for the cookie. I set a trap. It was digital, quiet, and irresistible to someone who felt entitled to my finances. I opened a new high-yield savings account with a bank I knew she used for their joint checking. I transferred $500 into it, enough to be interesting, not enough to ruin me if I lost it. Then, I set up the online access. For the security questions, I did not choose the random, obscure ones I usually used. I chose the ones that were part of the family lore. Make of your first car, name of your elementary school, city where your parents met. Marlene knew all of these. She had heard the stories at Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas parties for 15 years. Then came the breadcrumb. I sent an email to my father, knowing Marlene read his correspondence. Subject: New savings account. Hi, Dad. Just wanted to let you know I opened a dedicated emergency fund account at First People's Bank. I am trying to keep it separate from my main savings so I'm not tempted to touch it. I put a little seed money in there. Hopefully, I won't need it. But it is good to have. Love, Piper. I waited. It took less than 48 hours. I was at work, sitting in a budget meeting, when my phone buzzed against the table. I glanced down. It was a security alert from First People's Bank. Alert. Failed login attempt. I kept my face neutral, but under the table, my hand clenched into a fist. 10 minutes later, another buzz. Alert. Password reset requested. And then, 5 minutes after that, alert. Security questions answered successfully. Temporary password sent to account email. She had done it. She had seen the email, gone to the bank's website, entered my username, which was always just my first and last name, and clicked Forgot Password. When the security questions popped up, she had answered them, but she had hit a wall. The temporary password went to my email, not hers. She could not get in without that code. I opened the banking app on my phone and checked the activity log. It showed the IP address of the device that had requested the reset. I cross-referenced it with the IP address from the Blue Fern Home Tech login I had tracked weeks ago. They were identical, and the geolocation pinned it to Briar Glen, Oregon, specifically, the residential node that serviced Juniper Ridge. The call was coming from inside the house. I took a screenshot of the log. I saved the alert emails. I printed everything out and put it in a binder I had started labeling the file. It was no longer a suspicion. It was documented evidence of attempted cyber intrusion. I called Dana Halloway. She took the bait. I said, "I have the IP logs." "Good," Dana said, her voice crisp. "That is the leverage we need, but we do not play it yet. We use it to build the wall higher. We spent the next 2 days drafting what Dana called a cease and preserve notice. It was a terrifyingly legal document. It did not accuse Marlene directly. Dana said that was too risky without a police report, but it put the institutions on notice. We sent letters to Canyon Vale Mortgage and every bank I had ever done business with, explicitly stating that I had reason to believe my identity was being compromised and demanding that they preserve all records, voice logs, and signature cards related to my name. It was a shot across the bow. If Marlene tried to move again, she would find the doors locked and the cameras rolling. But legal walls do not stop social rumors. That weekend, I drove back to Juniper Ridge. There was a neighborhood fall mixer at the community center, and Raphael had asked me to come. "Please, mija," he had said on the phone, his voice sounding thin. "It would look good if you were there. Everyone asks about you. Marlene wants to show off the family." I went, not for Marlene, but because I wanted to hear what everyone was asking. The community center was decorated with hay bales and pumpkins. It was a wholesome, picture-perfect scene of suburban success. Marlene was in her element, wearing a cashmere sweater that matched the autumn theme, holding court near the cider station. When I walked in, she froze for a second. I saw the calculation behind her eyes. She was wondering if I knew about the bank login attempt, but since she hadn't successfully gotten in, she probably assumed I hadn't noticed. She smoothed her expression into a welcoming smile. "Piper, you made it." She came over to hug me. I let her, my body rigid. She smelled of expensive perfume and deception. I circulated the room, holding a cup of cider I did not drink. I introduced myself to neighbors I hadn't met at the housewarming. "Oh, you are the daughter," a woman named Mrs. Higgins exclaimed. She was an older woman with blue-rinsed hair and a sharp, inquisitive nose. "Marlene talks about you all the time, does she?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Oh, yes, it is just so noble what you are doing." I frowned. "Noble? Supporting them like that?" Mrs. Higgins said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Most children your age, they just move away and forget. But for you to step up and help them with the house. Marlene says you feel just terrible about being absent for so many years. She says this is your way of making amends." The room seemed to tilt. The noise of the party faded into a dull roar. Making amends. Marlene hadn't just stolen my credit score. She had stolen my story. She had taken my years of hard work, my independence, and my boundaries, and she had twisted them into a narrative of guilt and redemption. In her version of reality, I wasn't the victim of financial abuse. I was the prodigal daughter trying to buy back her parents' love after years of neglect. It was brilliant, and it was cruel. It weaponized the one thing I was most insecure about, the fear that I was a bad daughter for moving away. I looked across the room at Marlene. She was laughing at something a neighbor said, her hand resting possessively on my father's shoulder. She looked like the saint. I was just the wallet. I felt a flash of anger so hot it almost blinded me, but mixed with the anger was a deep, corrosive shame. Was that how everyone saw me? As the guilty daughter paying penance? I found my father near the buffet. He was eating a cookie, looking a little lost. "Dad," I said. He looked up, crumbs on his lip. "Hey, Piper. Nice party." "Huh?" "Dad, I need to talk to you. Now." I did not wait for an answer. I walked out the side door into the cool autumn air. He followed me, shuffling slightly. "What is it?" he asked. "You look upset." I turned on him. "Dad, why does Mrs. Higgins think I'm paying for your house?" He blinked. "What?" "She just told me that it is noble that I'm supporting you. She said Marlene told her I'm doing it because I feel guilty about being absent." Raphael's face crumbled. He looked down at his shoes, then away at the parking lot. "Marlene talks. Piper, you know how she is. She likes to make things sound nice." "Nice?" I snapped. "Dad, she is telling people I am paying your bills because I was a bad daughter. That is not nice. That is a lie, and it covers up the fact that she is actually stealing from me." "Piper, stop," he pleaded. "She is not stealing." I reached into my purse and pulled out the piece of evidence I had been carrying since my last visit. The envelope, the one addressed to 1402 Juniper Ridge Lane, but containing my bank statement. Look at this. Dad, I found this on your kitchen counter last time. He stared at it. She changed my mailing address. Dad, without my permission, she diverted my bank statements to your house so I wouldn't see them. That is fraud. Why would she do that if she wasn't hiding something? Raphael looked at the envelope. He looked old, tired. She said she was helping. He whispered, "She said you are messy with papers. She said you move around a lot. She wanted to keep the files safe." "I am 33 years old," I shouted, and I saw a couple walking into the center turn and look at us. I lowered my voice, trembling. "I have lived in the same apartment for 5 years. I am a senior project manager. I am not messy. That is a story she tells you to make me look incompetent so you will let her take over." The door to the community center opened. Marlene stepped out. She had sensed the disturbance. Her radar was impeccable. "Is everything okay out here?" she asked. Her voice light but her eyes hard. I turned to her, holding up the envelope. "We were just talking about my mail." "Marlene, and why you told Mrs. Higgins I'm paying for your house out of guilt." Marlene did not flinch. She did not look guilty. She looked disappointed. "Oh, Piper," she sighed. "You always have to make everything a confrontation, don't you?" "I am not making it a confrontation. I am stating facts. You changed my address." "I was helping," she said, her voice rising to match mine. She stepped down from the curb, moving to stand next to Raphael. "You forget things. Piper, you are busy with your career. You are always rushing. I just wanted to make sure your important documents didn't get lost in one of those piles you have at your apartment." I stared at her. My apartment was minimalist. I did not have piles. "And the neighbors?" I asked. "Why are you telling them I am paying for the house?" "I never said that," she lied smoothly. "I said you were generous. I said you helped us with the security system. If they assumed more, that is on them. I was trying to make you look good. Piper, I was trying to show them that you care about your father, even if you are never around." The accusation landed perfectly. "Even if you are never around." Raphael looked from her to me. He looked like a man watching two different realities collide. "Piper, please," he said, his voice cracking. "Why are you attacking her? After all she has done. She found us this house. She takes care of me. Why can't you just say thank you?" I felt like I had been punched in the gut. After all she has done, she had him completely. She had rewritten the script so thoroughly that any attempt to defend myself looked like aggression. If I showed him the IP logs, he would say she was just checking on me. If I showed him the bank transfer attempts, he would say she was just sinking the budget. I looked at my father. I realized that arguing with Marlene in front of him was useless. She was the interpreter of his world. I needed to bypass the interpreter. I took a deep breath. I put the envelope back in my purse. "You know what?" I said, my voice eerily calm. "You are right. I am stressed. I am sorry." Marlene blinked. She hadn't expected me to fold. A flicker of triumph crossed her face. "It is okay, sweetie," she said, reaching for my arm. "We know you work hard." I pulled my arm away gently. "Dad," I said, "I am hungry. Let us go grab a burger. Just you and me. Like old times. I want to hear about the garden." Marlene started to speak. "Oh, we have plenty of food inside." "No, Marlene," I said, looking at her. "I need some time with my dad. You stay here. You are the hostess. You cannot leave the guests." I looked at Raphael. "Dad, please?" He looked at Marlene, seeking permission. She hesitated. She knew she couldn't say no without looking controlling in front of the neighbors who were starting to filter out. "Go ahead. Rafe," she said, her smile tight. "Do not be too long. We have the raffle at 4. I walked my father to my car before she could change her mind. I drove us away from Juniper Ridge, away from the perfect lawns and the poisonous whispers. We went to a diner on the edge of town, a place with cracked vinyl seats and the smell of old grease. It was real. It felt safe. We ordered burgers. I waited until he had eaten half of his, until his shoulders had dropped from their defensive hunch. "Dad," I said gently, "I am not attacking her, but I need you to answer one question for me, and I need you to tell me the truth, not what she told you to say." He put his burger down. "Piper, the house, Dad, the down payment, it was $100,000. Where did that money come from?" He looked at his fries. "We sold the old house." He said, "The old house had a mortgage. Dad, you didn't walk away with $100,000 cash. Where did the rest come from?" He was silent for a long time. He traced a pattern on the formica table with his finger. "She borrowed it," he said softly. "Borrowed it? From whom?" "From her sister," he said, "in Arizona." I frowned. Marlene's sister had been estranged for 10 years. "Dad, are you sure?" "That is what she said. But—" He looked up at me, and his eyes were full of fear. "But I signed a letter. Piper, a gift letter." My heart stopped. "You told me that before." I said, "You said it was for taxes." "She said the bank needed to see where the money came from," he said, his voice trembling. "She said we could not tell them it was a loan, or they wouldn't give us the mortgage. So she said we had to say it was a gift. From you." "From me," I repeated. "Because you have good credit," he said, "and because she said you would not mind. She said it was just paper, just a formality. She said you would never even know." I closed my eyes. "So you signed a letter telling the bank that I gave you $100,000? "Yes," he whispered. "And did she show the bank proof? Did she show them my bank statement?" He nodded miserably. "She had a paper. It looked like your bank paper. She put it with the letter." I sat back in the booth. The diner noise, the clatter of plates, the sizzling of the grill seemed to fade away. It was confirmed. Marlene had committed mortgage fraud, and my father had signed his name to it. He looked at me, his eyes wet. "Am I in trouble? Piper?" I looked at him. He wasn't a criminal. He was a man who had been slowly, methodically stripped of his agency until he didn't know which way was up. He had signed because he trusted her. He had signed because he was afraid of losing her. I reached across the table and took his hand. "We are going to fix it, Dad, but you have to listen to me. You cannot sign anything else. Nothing. Not a birthday card. Not a check. Not a form. If she puts a piece of paper in front of you, you tell her you need to show it to me first. Can you do that?" He nodded. "I can do that." I drove him back to the party. I did not go inside. I dropped him at the curb and watched him walk back to her. She was waiting at the door. She put her hand on his back and guided him inside, like a spider pulling a fly back into the web. I drove straight to Dana's office. Even though it was a Saturday, I called her on the way and she agreed to meet me. "She has him," I told Dana. Pacing around her small conference room, he signed the gift letter. He knew it was a lie, but he signed it. She told him it was just a formality. Dana rubbed her temples. "This is messy. Piper, if we go to the police now, your father is on the hook for bank fraud. He signed the document. Marlene can claim he was the mastermind and she was just following his lead. She can claim she didn't know the bank statement was forged. She has plausible deniability, and he has his signature on the confession. So I can't report her?" I asked, incredulous, not without implicating him. Dana said, "At least not yet. We need proof that she coerced him, or proof that she forged the bank statement herself." "So what do I do?" I asked. "I can't just let her keep using my name." Dana looked at me. "You stop the bleeding," she said. "You cut off the access points. You force her to use her own money. If she is desperate enough to commit mortgage fraud, she is running out of cash. If you cut the cords, she will have to make a move, and when she makes a move, she will make a mistake." I left Dana's office with a cold resolve. I wasn't going to blow up the family. Not yet. I was going to starve the beast. I went home and sat at my computer. I pulled up the Blue Fern Home Tech account. Marlene had upgraded it again. It was back to the Platinum plan. She must have called them right after I left the party. Using my information again. I did not downgrade it this time. I canceled it. I called the customer service line. I navigated the automated menu. When I got a human, I gave them the PIN I had set. I want to cancel the service completely. I said, "Ma'am, you are under contract," the agent warned. "I do not care." I said, "Terminate the contract. Send the final bill to the address on file. I am revoking authorization for any future charges." I waited until I got the confirmation email. Service canceled. Then, I did something Marlene wouldn't expect. I called Bluefern back. I asked to speak to sales. "I want to set up a new account for my father, Rafael Flores." I said, "I set up a new system, basic plan." But this time, I did not put it in my name. I put it in Rafael's name, and I gave them his bank account number, the one I knew he still controlled. The small pension account he kept separate from Marlene. I paid the installation fee myself, as a gift. But the monthly bill? That was going to Rafael. I drafted a text to my father. "Dad, I canceled the old security account because there were too many billing errors. I set up a brand new one for you. It is in your name now. So you have full control. The bill will come to you directly. It is only $40. I know you can handle that. Love, Piper." I hit send. I knew what would happen. Marlene would see the text. She would see that the Piper Scholarship Fund had been closed. She would see that the security system, her entry point into my finances, her little test of my compliance, was gone. She would be furious. She would be panicked. And she would have to find a new way to get money. I sat back in my chair and watched the sun go down over Port Crescent. I felt a strange, cold calm. I had stopped trying to be the good daughter. I was done with the guilt. Marlene wanted a war. She had one, but she was about to find out that she had underestimated the enemy. She thought she was fighting a lonely, insecure girl. She didn't realize she was fighting a project manager. And I was about to manage this project into the ground. The phone rang at 11:40 at night. I was awake, sitting in my living room with the lights off, watching the city traffic below. I knew who it was before I looked at the screen. I had been waiting for the backlash ever since I canceled the Bluefern contract 8 hours earlier. I picked up the phone. I did not say hello. "What are you doing?" Marlene's voice was not the sugary, melodic soprano she used for company. It was a low, jagged hiss. "You think you are being clever? I am sleeping." "Marlene," I said, keeping my voice flat. Or I was. "Do not lie to me," she snapped. "You canceled the security service. You left your father unprotected. Do you have any idea what that does to him? He is pacing the hallway right now. He is terrified someone is going to break in." I sat up straighter. "I set up a new account. Marlene, it is in his name. It is paid for. He is perfectly safe. The only difference is that you do not control the login anymore." There was a silence on the line, heavy and breathing. "You are punishing us," she said. "That is what this is. You are punishing an old man because you are petty and jealous that he finally has a nice life. You want him to feel small. You want him to beg you for help so you can dangle it over his head." "I am not punishing anyone," I said. "I am removing myself from a financial equation I never asked to be part of. You are stressing him out." "Piper!" she shouted, and the raw volume made me pull the phone away from my ear. "His blood pressure is through the roof tonight. If he has a stroke, that is on you. You hear me? If he drops dead in this hallway, it is because you had to play your little power games." The guilt hit me, sharp and immediate. It was her favorite weapon, and she wielded it with surgical precision. "Then stop winding him up," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Tell him the system works. Tell him the bill is paid. You are the one telling him to be afraid. Marlene." I hung up. I turned off the phone. I sat in the dark, my heart hammering against my ribs. I felt dirty. I felt cruel. That was how she worked. She dragged you down into the mud until you couldn't remember what clean looked like. 2 days later, the packet from Canyon Vale Mortgage arrived. I had requested it through Dana's cease and preserve demand, leveraging the identity theft claim to force them to release the application documents. It was a thick envelope. I opened it at my kitchen table with a letter opener, my hands cold. I flipped past the standard disclosures, the interest rate tables, the amortization schedule, I found the gift letter my father had admitted to signing. There it was. I, Piper Flores, verify that I am gifting $100,000 to Rafael and Marlene Flores. The signature at the bottom was a scrawl that looked vaguely like mine, but tighter, sharper. I kept turning the pages, and then I stopped. It was a document titled Addendum to Loan Application, Future Collateral Agreement. I read the paragraph twice because my brain refused to process it the first time. The borrowers indicate that secondary financing will be secured via a home equity line of credit, HELOC, to be co-signed by family member Piper Flores within 6 months of closing. As part of a multi-generational family planning strategy, I felt the blood drain from my face. She wasn't just satisfied with the down payment. She had promised the lender, probably to get a better rate or to qualify for a higher loan-to-value ratio, that I would come on board later. She had pledged my future creditworthiness. She had told them I was a silent partner who would eventually sign on the dotted line. That explained the housewarming pressure. That explained the rumors about me supporting them. She was grooming the narrative so that when she shoved a pen in my hand 6 months from now, everyone would expect me to sign. If I refused, I wouldn't just be saying no. I would be reneging on a family promise she had already made in my name. I grabbed my keys and drove to Dana's office. I did not even call. I slapped the document on her desk. Look at page 14. I said. Dana put on her glasses. She read it in silence. Her expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened. This is premeditated, she said softly. She is not just reacting to cash flow problems. She has a roadmap. She plans to leverage the equity in that house to pay off debts, and she needs your income to qualify for the line of credit because your father's pension isn't enough. We have to stop it. I said, I do not care about the family piece anymore. She is trying to mortgage my life. Dana nodded. She pulled a file from her drawer. Then we take the step you have been avoiding. We file the identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission, and we send a formal dispute letter to Canyonvale enclosing this affidavit. We tell them explicitly, Piper Flores is not a party to this loan, never provided a gift, and will never co-sign a HELOC. I felt a wave of nausea. If we do that, I said, Canyonvale will investigate. They might call the loan. They might foreclose. My dad loses the house. He has already lost the house. Piper, Dana said gently, he just doesn't know it yet. Marlene bought a house she couldn't afford with money she didn't have, based on a cosigner who didn't exist. The math was never going to work. You are not causing the crash. You are just refusing to be the airbag. I signed the papers. My hand shook. But I signed. Piper Flores, declare under penalty of perjury. It felt like signing a warrant for my father's eviction, but I needed to understand why. Why was she so desperate? My father had a good pension. They had the proceeds from the old house, even after paying off the old mortgage. They should have had something. Why did she need $100,000 from me and a line of credit on top of it? I went home and turned into a digital forensic investigator. I stopped looking at the house and started looking at Marlene. I knew she had run a small interior design business years ago, Marlene Moss Interiors. She always talked about it as a boutique firm she had voluntarily closed to focus on Rafael. I searched the business name in the state court records database. Nothing came up in the active docket. I tried the archived civil filings, and there it was. Case number, CV 202-40982. Plaintiff, Lux Fabrics, Wholesale Limited. Defendant, Marlene Moss. Interiors, Marlene Flores. Status, settlement pending. I paid the $20 to download the complaint. It was a lawsuit for unpaid vendor invoices totaling $65,000, plus legal fees and interest. The filing date was 2 years ago, but the interesting part was the most recent docket entry, dated 3 months ago, right before they bought the house in Juniper Ridge. Stipulated judgment entered. Defendant agrees to pay $85,000 in full by December 1st, 2025, or judgment will be executed against personal assets. December 1st. That was 3 weeks away. The pieces clicked together like the tumblers of a lock. She didn't want the house because she needed a forever reset. She needed the house because she needed to hide the money. Or maybe she needed to launder the money from the old house sale to pay the settlement without my father knowing. If she used the cash from the old house to pay the debt, she wouldn't have enough for the down payment on the new palace she had promised Raphael. So she needed a gift. She needed me to cover the hole she had dug. And the HELOC? The home equity line she wanted me to co-sign? That was probably to pay off the next wave of debts I hadn't found yet. She wasn't a monster. She was a drowning woman climbing on top of my father to breathe. And now she was reaching for me. I needed to tell him. Not with anger, not with a shouting match in the driveway. I needed to show him the math. I called him the next morning. "Dad," I said, "I am taking a half day. I am coming to pick you up. We are going for a drive." He sounded hesitant. "Marlene is not feeling well." "Piper. She is in bed with a migraine. I should stay. She will be fine for an hour." I said, "I will be there in 40 minutes. Be outside." He was waiting on the curb when I pulled up. He looked small in his windbreaker. He got in, and the car filled with the smell of his aftershave and anxiety. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Just to the park," I said. "By the river, where we used to fish." We drove in silence. The river was high, the water gray and churning with the autumn rains. We sat on a bench overlooking the water. It was cold, but the cold felt clarifying. I opened my bag. I took out the folder. "Dad," I said, "I know you are scared. I know Marlene is telling you I am the enemy. But I need you to look at 3 pieces of paper. That is all. Just look at them." I handed him the first one. It was the judgment against Marlene Moss Interiors. "Do you know what this is?" I asked. He squinted at the paper. "It looks like a bill?" "It is a lawsuit. Dad, Marlene owes $85,000 to a fabric company. She has to pay it by December 1st. That is in 3 weeks. He shook his head. "No, she closed that business. She told me she sold it. She made a profit. She didn't sell it. Dad, she walked away from the bills, and now they have caught up with her." I handed him the second paper, the Canyon Vale addendum. "And this," I said, "this is a promise she made to the bank. She told them I would co-sign a loan for you guys in 6 months. She told them I agreed to put my credit on the line for your house." He stared at the words. "Family planning strategy. She said it was just options." He stammered. "She said banks like to see family support. She never said you had to sign." "Dad," I said gently, "if I do not sign, the bank can call the loan. She promised them something she couldn't deliver." I handed him the third paper. It was the printout of the login attempts to my bank account, the map showing the IP address at his house. "And this," I said, "this is from last week. She tried to log into my savings account. She answered the security questions. The name of your elementary school. The make of your first car. She tried to reset my password." He looked at the map. He looked at the timestamps. "Why?" he whispered. "Because she needs money. Dad, she is desperate. The lawsuit is due. The mortgage is too high. She is drowning, and she is trying to use my money to stay afloat. And she is using you to keep me quiet." He dropped the papers on the bench. He put his head in his hands. "She promised me," he said, his voice cracking. "She promised me we would be safe here. She said the old house had bad memories. She said this was a clean slate. There is no clean slate. Dad, not when you build it on lies." He started to cry. It was a quiet, hitching sound that broke my heart. "I am afraid." "Piper," he admitted, looking at the gray water, "I am 70 years old. I cannot start over. If we lose this house, where do we go? I have no money. She handles everything. You have me." I said. I took his hand. "We can fix this. But not if you stay in the dark. Not if you keep signing things." I laid out the plan I had worked out with Dana. "We open a new bank account for your pension. Today, just you. We redirect the deposit. We pay the bills directly. Light, water, food. We stop giving her control of the cash flow. And then, we hire a mediator, someone neutral. We sit down with her and we look at the real numbers. If the house has to be sold, it gets sold, but we do it on our terms, not the bank's. He looked terrified. She will leave me, he whispered. If I take the money away, she will leave. I looked at him. That was the real fear. Not the house, not the debt. He was afraid of being alone. Dad, I said, if she only stays because you let her spend money you do not have, is she really staying for you? He didn't answer. He just watched the river flow. I took him to the bank. We opened the account. He was trembling the whole time, looking over his shoulder as if Marlene might burst through the doors. When we finished, he looked exhausted, but he also looked a little straighter. He had a debit card in his pocket that only he knew the PIN for. I dropped him off at the house. I watched him walk to the door. He looked like a soldier returning to the front lines without a weapon. Marlene sensed the shift immediately. 2 days later, my cousin Elena called me from California. Piper, she said, her voice dripping with concern. I just got off the phone with Marlene. She sounds so worried about you. Worried? I asked, typing on my laptop. She says you are having episodes? That you are paranoid about money? She said you canceled their security system because you thought the company was spying on you. Piper, are you okay? Are you under a lot of stress at work? I closed my laptop. Marlene is spreading rumors because I caught her stealing. Elena, do not believe everything you hear. I hung up, but the calls kept coming. An aunt in Texas, a family friend from the old neighborhood. The narrative was consistent. Piper is unstable. Piper is jealous. Piper is having a breakdown and lashing out at her poor, saintly stepmother. It was a brilliant strategy. If I tried to expose the fraud now, everyone would see it as the ravings of a mentally unstable woman. She was inoculating the family against the truth. And then came the invitation. It was a thick cream-colored card, mailed to my apartment, now that I had corrected the address with the post office. You are warmly invited to a celebration of home and heritage, hosted by Rafael and Marlene Flores. Saturday, November 18th, dinner and a special announcement regarding the Flores family legacy. The family legacy. I stared at the card. I knew exactly what that was. That was the public trap. She was going to announce the family planning strategy in front of everyone. My aunts, my cousins, the neighbors. She was going to toast to my generosity and my commitment to the future. She was going to corner me in a room full of people and hand me a pen, relying on social pressure to make me sign the HELOC paperwork or whatever other document she had cooked up. If I refused in front of everyone, I was the unstable, ungrateful daughter causing a scene. If I signed, I was on the hook for $100,000. I called Dana. She is escalating. I said, she is throwing a party to force my hand. Then we attend. Dana said, you want to go? I will come as your guest. Dana said, introduce me as a friend. I will bring a notary stamp in my purse, just in case she wants to do business. And I will bring the affidavit we filed. You think she will try to make me sign something there? I guarantee it. Dana said, predators like audiences. It makes the victim compliant. She thinks you won't want to embarrass your father. She is right. I said, I don't. Then we have to make sure she is the one who gets embarrassed. Dana said, the night of the party, I dressed like armor, a sharp black blazer, tailored trousers, heels that clicked like gavels on the pavement. I picked up Dana, who looked equally formidable in a navy suit, though she had softened it with a silk scarf to pass as a civilian. We drove to Juniper Ridge. The house was lit up like a cruise ship. Music drifted into the street. We walked up the driveway. My stomach was a knot of acid, but my head was clear. I wasn't the confused girl from the first visit. I wasn't the guilty daughter. I was the one holding the receipts. Marlene met us at the door. She was wearing a shimmering gold dress. She looked triumphant. Piper, she cried, opening her arms. And you brought a friend. This is Dana. I said, she is an old friend from the city. I didn't want to drive back alone late at night. Dana smiled. A shark's smile. Lovely to meet you. Marlene, Piper has told me so much about your creativity. Marlene blinked. sensing the double entendre but ignoring it. Welcome, welcome, come in. Everyone is here. They were my cousin Elena, my Aunt Rosa, the neighbors, Mrs. Higgins and Cheryl. It was a full house. I saw my father across the room. He was holding a glass of sparkling cider. He looked terrified. When he saw me, his eyes darted to Marlene, then back to me, pleading silently, "Don't make a scene." I walked over and kissed his cheek. "Hi, Dad. Hi, Mija," he whispered. "Please, be nice. I am always nice, Dad." Dinner was a buffet of expensive catering. Marlene worked the room, telling stories, laughing, playing the matriarch. She kept glancing at me, checking my position, making sure I was contained. When the dessert was served, a towering cake with Flores family written in icing, Marlene clinked her spoon against her glass. "Everyone, if I could have your attention." The room went quiet. Marlene stood by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel. "We are so blessed to have you all here," she began, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "This house, it is more than just walls. It is a dream Raphael and I have had for years." She looked at Raphael. He stared at his shoes. "But dreams do not happen alone." She continued, "They take sacrifice, they take love, and they take family stepping up." She turned her gaze to me. The spotlight swung. "I want to make a special announcement," she said. "A lot of you know that Raphael and I have been working on a plan to secure our future and the future of this family. We didn't want this house to just be for us. We wanted it to be an asset for everyone, a legacy." She picked up a folder from the mantel. "Piper," she said, her voice dropping to a reverent hush, "you have been so incredible. Your help with the down payment. We could never have done it without you." A murmur went through the room. "Aw," someone said. Aunt Rosa dabbed her eyes. "And tonight," Marlene said, opening the folder, "we want to make it official. We want to secure the next step. Piper, I have the papers here for the Family Equity Partnership. It just needs your signature to lock in the rate. It is just a formality, really. But it ensures that this house stays in the family forever." She held the pen out to me. "Come up here. Sweetie, let us sign it together." The trap snapped shut. The room was watching, smiling faces, expectant eyes. If I said no, I was ruining the moment. I was rejecting the legacy. I felt Dana shift beside me. She was ready. But I didn't need Dana to fight this for me. I stepped forward. I walked through the crowd. The heels of my shoes were loud on the hardwood. I took the folder from Marlene's hand. I looked at the document. It was exactly what we thought. A deed of trust and a cosigner agreement for a $150,000 line of credit. I looked at Marlene. Her eyes were hard, daring me. Sign it, or break his heart. I turned to the room. I held up the paper. "Marlene is right," I said, my voice clear and steady. "This is a very important document." Marlene smiled, relaxing slightly. "But," I continued, "there seems to be a mistake." I turned to Marlene. "This document says I provided the down payment for this house." I looked at my father. "Dad," I said, "did I provide the down payment for this house?" The room went deadly silent. Marlene's smile froze. "Piper, now isn't the time for modesty." "Dad," I repeated, louder, "did I give you $100,000 for this house? Yes or no?" Raphael looked up. He looked at Marlene, who was staring at him with a mix of command and panic. He looked at me. He looked at the guests who were starting to exchange confused glances. I saw the moment he decided. It wasn't bravery. It was exhaustion. He was just too tired to lie anymore. "No," he whispered. "I didn't hear you." "Dad," I said gently. "No," he said, his voice cracking. "You didn't." A gasp went through the room. Aunt Rosa lowered her napkin. I turned back to Marlene. "So if I didn't give the money," I said, tapping the folder, "then this document is fraudulent. And the gift letter you sent to the bank was fraudulent. And if I sign this, I am committing a federal crime." Marlene's face turned a blotchy red. "You ungrateful little—" she started, her voice dropping the act. I am not ungrateful. Marlene, I said, I am protected. I motioned to Dana. She stepped forward. I am Dana Holloway, she announced to the room. I am Piper's attorney. We have already filed an affidavit of identity theft with the Federal Trade Commission regarding this mortgage. We have also notified the lender that any documents submitted in Ms. Flores's name were forged. Dana looked at Marlene. If you attempt to coerce my client into signing a financial instrument in front of witnesses, we will add extortion to the list of complaints. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Marlene looked around the room. She saw the shock on the neighbors' faces. She saw her social standing evaporating like mist. She looked at Raphael. Rafe, tell them, she shrieked. Tell them she is lying. Raphael stood up. He looked at his wife. He looked at the house he had been promised would be a sanctuary. She is not lying. Marlene, he said softly. We lied. Marlene let out a sound like a wounded animal. She threw the pen on the floor and stormed out of the room, heading for the sanctuary of the master bedroom. The party was over. I stood there, holding the folder. I looked at my father. He looked broken, but he was standing on his own 2 feet. I walked over to him. Let us get your coat. Dad, I said, you are staying with me tonight. He nodded. He didn't look back at the master bedroom. He just followed me out the door. The celebration dinner was reaching its peak. The air in the living room was thick with the scent of roasted garlic and expensive perfume, a sensory overload that masked the rotting foundation beneath our feet. I stood near the fireplace, Dana Holloway beside me like a silent sentinel. While Marlene held court, she had recovered from the initial tension of our arrival and was now in full performance mode. She looked radiant, flushed with wine and the adrenaline of her own deception. She clinked a silver spoon against her crystal flute. The sharp, high-pitched ring cut through the chatter. Everyone, please, Marlene said, beaming, if I could have your attention for a moment. The room quieted. My father, Raphael, stood near the edge of the rug, holding a glass of sparkling cider with both hands as if it were an anchor. He looked at me, his eyes pleading for silence, for compliance, for peace. But tonight, peace was a currency I was no longer willing to accept. Marlene placed a hand on her chest, a gesture of practiced humility. Raphael and I are so blessed, she began, her voice trembling with emotion. To have this home, to have this fresh start. It has been a long road, and we could not have walked it alone. She turned her gaze toward me. It was a warm, maternal look that made my skin crawl. We have to give a special thank you to Piper, she said, heads turned toward me. Mrs. Higgins beamed. Aunt Rosa dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Piper has been our rock, Marlene continued. She helped us when we stumbled. She helped us build this sanctuary, and tonight, we want to make sure that her generosity is recognized, not just as a gift, but as a legacy. She reached onto the mantel and picked up a thick, cream-colored folder. I have spoken with our family planner, Marlene said, walking toward me with the folder held out like an offering. And we have drawn up something to protect everyone. Just one last thing to make it official, a family partnership agreement. She stopped in front of me, smiling for the audience, but her eyes were hard flint. Open it, sweetie, she urged. It is for you. I took the folder. My hands were steady. I could feel Dana shifting slightly beside me, ready to intervene, but I did not need her yet. I opened the cover. The document on top was not a partnership agreement. It was titled, Deed of Trust and Promissory Note, secured by family collateral. I scanned the legal text. It was artfully written. It framed my previous contributions, the $100,000 I had never given, as a temporary family loan that was now being consolidated into a formal lien against the property. But the kicker was the second page. It was a schedule for a notary appointment. Appointment confirmed. November 19th, 9 a.m., mobile notary service. Location, 1402 Juniper Ridge Lane. She had a notary coming to the house tomorrow morning. She planned to pressure me into signing this tonight in front of the witnesses, creating a social contract, and then seal it legally tomorrow before I could back out. I looked up from the paper. Marlene was watching me, her smile tight. "It just says that the house is yours as much as ours," she said loudly. "For the benefit of the room, it secures your investment." I closed the folder slowly. "This is interesting." "Marlene," I said. My voice was calm, but it carried to the back of the room. "It is a standard protection," she said, reaching for a pen from her clutch. "Just sign the acknowledgement, and we can cut the cake." I did not take the pen. "It says here that this is a temporary family loan," I said, "and it says I have a notary appointment tomorrow morning." Marlene laughed. A brittle sound. "Well, we have to make it legal. Piper, you know how banks are." I looked at her. "Marlene," I said, "can you explain to everyone here why my mailing address was changed to this house without my permission?" The smile froze on her face. It did not fade. It simply turned into a rictus, a mask that had lost its animator. "I do not know what you are talking about," she stammered. "I think you do," I said, "and while you are explaining that, maybe you can explain why there is an addendum filed with Canyon Vale Mortgage claiming I agreed to co-sign a home equity line of credit." The room went deadly silent. The clinking of forks, the murmur of conversation, the background jazz music, it all seemed to vanish, leaving a vacuum of pure tension. Raphael stepped forward. He looked terrified. "Piper, please," he said, his voice shaking. "Not now. This is a party. We can talk about paperwork later. Let us just have a nice dinner." I looked at my father. He was doing what he always did. He was trying to smooth the waters, even as the ship was sinking. He wanted to pretend that the iceberg was just an ice cube for his drink. I could not let him do it. Not this time. "Dad," I said, turning to him fully, "I am not fighting. I am asking a question. Did you know my bank mail was coming here?" Raphael blinked. He looked at the guests, who were staring at him. He looked at Marlene, who was radiating a silent, desperate command to shut me down. He started. "Dad," I said gently, "did you know?" He slumped. The fight went out of him. He looked like a man waking up in a strange house he had bought with borrowed courage. "Yes," he whispered. A collective gasp went through the room. Aunt Rosa lowered her glass. I turned back to Marlene. "You changed my address," I said. "You diverted my bank statements. You forged a gift letter. And now you are trying to trick me into signing a loan document in front of a live audience so you can use my credit to pay off your debts." Marlene's face crumpled. The mask of the gracious hostess dissolved, replaced by the face of a cornered animal. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over her perfectly powered cheeks. "I did it for us," she cried out, her voice shrill. She looked around the room, pleading for sympathy. "I was drowning," she sobbed. "The business, the settlement, they were going to take everything. I just needed a bridge. I just needed a little time." She turned to me, her eyes blazing with a mixture of guilt and accusation. "You have so much, Piper! You have your fancy job, your savings, your perfect credit. You would not have even missed it. I was going to pay it back. Once the rates dropped, once we refinanced, I was going to put it all back. I wouldn't have missed it?" I repeated. "You tried to steal $100,000 and mortgage my future. And you think I wouldn't have noticed? I was protecting your father," she screamed. "Do you think he could handle the truth? Do you think he could handle knowing we were broke? I took the burden on myself. I did what I had to do." Dana stepped forward. She did not look like a party guest anymore. She looked like the prosecutor she was. "Ms. Flores," Dana said, her voice cool and professional. "Do I have your permission to record this explanation? It would be very helpful for the discovery phase of the civil suit." Marlene recoiled, as if Dana had slapped her. "No," she snapped. "You get away from me. You have no right." She turned back to me, her face twisted with ugliness. "You are selfish. Piper, you have always been selfish. You come here with your lawyer and your judgments, punishing a woman who kept your father alive, who gave him a home, who gave him dignity, And you want to tear it all down over money? She was good. Even now. Exposed and bleeding. She was trying to spin the narrative. She was trying to make me the villain for counting the coins while she saved the man. I looked at her. And I felt nothing. No anger, no guilt. Just a cold, hard clarity. It is not about the money, Marlene, I said. It is about the fact that you think you own us. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. And it is over. I said, What is that? She hissed. This is a confirmation number. I said, I filed a dispute with the credit bureaus 3 days ago. I filed an identity theft affidavit with the Federal Trade Commission, and yesterday, my attorney faxed a copy of that affidavit to Canyon Vale Mortgage. Marlene went pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. They know. Marlene, I said, the bank knows the gift letter is a forgery. They know I am not a cosigner. They have frozen the file. You cannot refinance. You cannot open a line of credit. You cannot move a single dollar. I took a step closer to her. Your plan is dead. The notary can come tomorrow if you want, but the only thing he will be notarizing is a foreclosure notice if you cannot come up with the money yourself. The room split. I could feel it. Half the guests, the ones who knew Marlene's charm but not her character, looked stunned, their hands covering their mouths. They were grappling with the enormity of the deception. But the other half, my family, the people who had known me since I was a child, looked horrified. They looked at me with a new respect, and at Marlene with revulsion. Identity theft. It was a dirty word. It wasn't a family loan. It was a crime. Marlene looked at Raphael. She grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his jacket. Rafe, tell her to stop. She pleaded. She is ruining everything. She is destroying our life. Raphael looked down at her hand on his arm. He looked at the folder in my hand. He looked at the guests who were now awkwardly checking their watches, desperate to escape the blast radius. He gently peeled her fingers off his sleeve. He stepped away from her, just one step, but it felt like a mile. He looked at me. Piper, he said. Dad, I said. I walked over to him. I ignored Marlene, who was sobbing uncontrollably now, a performance for an audience that had already left the theater. Dad, I said, keeping my voice low. This is the end of the line. I cannot save this house. I cannot save her from the consequences of what she did. I pointed to the door. I am leaving. I said, I am going back to Port Crescent, and I am offering you a choice. I looked at Marlene, then back to him. I will help you, Dad. I will help you find an apartment. I will help you move. I will help you separate your finances and stabilize your pension so you are safe. I will be your daughter, and I will be there for you. I paused, but only if she steps away. Completely. She cannot have access to your bank account. She cannot have power of attorney. She cannot be involved in your financial life. If you stay in this web with her, I have to walk away. I have to protect myself. Raphael looked at me. His eyes were watery, red-rimmed and exhausted. He looked at the beautiful, empty house around him. He looked at the woman he had married, who was currently screaming at my Aunt Rosa about loyalty. He looked terrified. He was 70 years old. The thought of starting over, of being alone, of packing boxes and sleeping in a strange apartment, it was a mountain he didn't think he could climb. He didn't answer right away. Marlene stopped screaming. She turned and stared at him. She wiped her face, her makeup smeared. Rafe? She said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You are not listening to her. We are partners. We are a team. Tell her to go to hell. She was daring him. She was betting on his weakness. She was betting that his fear of loneliness was stronger than his desire for truth. I waited. My heart was racing so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was the moment. I had stripped away the lies, the money, the illusions. All that was left was the man and his choice. I realized then that this was the first time in my life I wasn't buying peace. I wasn't offering to pay the bill. I wasn't offering to fix the leak. I was offering him the truth, and the truth was expensive. Dad? I said. The room held its breath. Marlene's eyes bore into him. I stood my ground. Rafael Flores took a deep breath. He looked at the wife who had promised him a forever reset, and he looked at the daughter who was offering him a way out of the ruins. He opened his mouth to speak. Thank you for listening to this story. I hope you found Piper's journey as intense and necessary as I did writing it. If this story resonated with you, or if you have ever had to draw a hard line with family to protect yourself, I would love to hear about it. Please leave a comment below and let me know where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you want to hear more stories about justice, boundaries, and the complicated dynamics of family loyalty, please subscribe to Revenge Stories. Don't forget to share your thoughts in English in the comments section. Until next time.